Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, Governor Tom Wolf's budget proposal, but first, my special guest, my special interview with U.S. Senator Bob Casey. As they say, let's get to it.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
All right, as everybody knows, Senator Bob Casey is my guest. I announced that a moment ago. Imagine this, Senator. There's nothing going on in Washington, a certain trial that takes place this week. We have what else? We have a $1.9 trillion stimulus package. We have more than 40 executive actions. I'm glad you folks in Washington don't have anything to do these days.
Gary, it's good to be with you. We're busy.
Yeah, to say the least. All right, well, look, I think what's surprising is the number of executive orders that President Biden has put out. During the campaign, there was a lot of talk about 15, reversing some of President Trump's orders. But, I mean, I think most of us out there are stunned at 42. Last I count was 42. I don't know what it is as you and I speak.
Well, there certainly are a lot of them. But I think in some ways, Terry, it references what you just cited, the pace of the work. Yeah, he gets up every morning, goes to work, and he's busy. But it also reflects, I think, the urgency of taking action. This pandemic, this terrible virus, which has devastated the country like nothing else in 100 years, has to be the subject of attention. And you've got to use every ounce of your power to go at it. And also, I think that the actions he took on the economy, the Buy American provision, for example, he wants to use the full measure of his power to push the virus behind us, to get people back to work, and to help American workers and help the economy overall. So it is a fast pace, but I think he wants to use that power. But ultimately, we're going to have to legislate to move the country forward as well.
Yeah, you make a good point. Let's talk about the $1.9 trillion stimulus package. The main focus of that, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, is COVID-19. And I mean, the rollout has been a complete disaster up to this point. I mean, there's no other way. I mean, I talk to people all the time, Senator, who say, I can't get signed up. I can't get, there's no vaccine available. Right?
Yeah, no question about it that President Biden coming into office was inheriting a system for vaccinations which was badly flawed. There's just no question about that. Now, we're grateful not only to the scientists who made the vaccine available, but for the great investments over many years to medical research, National Institutes of Health and other research entities around the country that made it possible. But that having a vaccine isn't enough. You've got to get the vaccine into people's arms. I do think that the actions President Biden has taken so far, coupled with legislation that we must pass, the $1.9 trillion bill, will speed up vaccinations, because he knows, as everyone knows, unless we get a lot more people vaccinated, tens and tens and tens of millions more at a very rapid pace, that we can't put this virus behind us. And I think he's determined to do that.
Yeah. Explain the Buy America aspect of this that I think you've stressed and made it an important part of your agenda.
Well, as you know, there are limits to the reach of executive actions, but there are times when a president can take action to push forward a policy just by spotlighting it and directing agencies to focus on a problem. We have about $600 billion in federal contracting. And we want to make sure, President Biden does, and a lot of Americans do, make sure that $600 billion is best utilized for American taxpayers, so we can buy American goods that are made by Americans. And I would hope, and this executive order points to this, made by good workers in union jobs. So one of the things he's doing is by pushing agencies to focus on, for example, the content in a product. It's not good enough to say this product is American made and American manufactured if most of the component parts are made somewhere else.
Yeah,
so the content of the product is important.
We're going to run to a break.
That's just one example.
Yeah, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, I want to talk about some other aspects of, some other these executive actions, which are very important. All right, we'll be back after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Welcome back, my special guest, U.S. Senator Bob Casey. Senator Casey, let's talk a little bit about health care.
Yeah, Terry, one of the executive actions was designed to increase access to health care for Americans. And, sometimes passing legislation is the only way to make that possible. But in this case, there are things that President Biden can do by way of executive order to increase access to health care. One of them is real simple. Just have an open enrollment period for the Affordable Care Act exchanges. In this case, it will go from February 15th to May 15th. That's several months worth of enrollment. Just making that available will allow people to enroll in healthcare, taking actions that increase access to quality, affordable healthcare.
Yeah, President Biden talked about a public option within the Affordable Care Act, if I understand that. What does that really mean?
Well, look, like anything else, you want to create some competition, and I certainly favor a public option. I did more than 10 years ago when we were debating the Affordable Care Act. So I think that's one of the ways to increase coverage, because I think every American or most Americans want to increase coverage. One way to do that is a public option. Another way is to allow people to buy into Medicare earlier, or begin Medicare at an earlier age. There's just lots of ways we can do that. I would favor extending Medicaid or expanding it again so that every child born in a hospital in our country is covered by Medicaid. Now, they can opt out if they want, but why should a baby leave a hospital not covered by some healthcare plan? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. One of the other aspects of the executive orders that's a bit controversial has to do with immigration. As you know, we got 11 million folks in our country who aren't documented, and he put them on a path to citizenship. And then you have the problems of new people with a huge number of people moving through Central America into our country. It's very, very complicated. What's your sense about that?
Well, I do think that, Terry, I hope in the next year or two, sometime within that time period, I think we'll get at least one shot finally at a comprehensive immigration bill. And I do think that despite what's happened over the last 5 or even longer, 5 or so years, that we can get bipartisan support. I think there's some Republicans in the Senate who finally want to solve this problem, not only by making sure we have strong border provisions in place, but by making sure we have a pathway to citizenship and a way to make sure that we can strengthen our economy by having a sound immigration system. We can't simply reject every idea and just say there's nothing we can do about it. This is a problem of long standing. I think people in both parties want to solve it.
I'll tell you, before I let you go, another question, and this one has to do with relations in the Senate. My sense is, and you're there, that I've never seen such lack of personal relationships between Democrats and Republicans. The bitterness seems genuine, or is that all an act?
No, there's some of that. There's no question about it. But I do think that there's a lot more respect and common ground than sometimes meets the eye. Now, there are times when you just go in a different direction, but I think most members of the Senate, not everyone, some people are just not people you want to spend much time with, but that's a small number. But most senators, I think, convey to each other or demonstrate to each other personal respect, in addition to trying to work together and to achieve common ground. I think we can do that, by the way, even on this bill that's ahead of us, to finally put the virus behind us. Absolutely. And to get the economy out of the ditch.
Yeah, I would hope. There's a lot of disagreement that you all can have, Democrats and Republicans, liberals and conservatives, but we've got to deal with this pandemic. I mean, that's by far the most serious problem, and it was the single most important issue in the presidential campaign.
Yep. Well, and Terry, just think about it this way, Terry. As of yesterday, I think in Pennsylvania, 21,955 deaths. Terry, I think my reading of the history is that's a lot more than we lost in the killed in action number in World War II of Pennsylvanians. We just can't allow this virus to keep killing people and allow the case number to keep growing. We've got to put it behind us. That means vaccinations and getting them done much faster. Yeah. And at the same time, giving people direct relief. We have over 1 million households in the state that don't have enough to eat in that household. We've got to make sure we have food.
Senator, I want to thank you. You're always welcome on the program. Stay safe, and I know you have nothing to do. I joke a little about that, but need a little sense of humor every now and then. All right, coming up, Governor Wolf's budget proposal. We'll get into that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Cross-State Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Hey, before we get to our next guest, I want to assert that Senator Pat Toomey has a standing invitation to come on the program. We'd love to have him come on. All right, John Cole, he's the managing editor of PoliticsPA, joins me, and we're going to talk about Governor Wolf's budget proposal. Well, let's start with this, John. A huge income tax hike proposal by the governor, and that seems to be attracting a lot of attention. Am I right? First of all, what is the proposal? And then we can talk about whether it's controversial or not. I think we all know the answer to that.
Correct. The two sides couldn't seem to be further apart right now, Terry. Governor Tom Wolf unveiled his budget proposal on Wednesday in a pre-recorded message as opposed to in the chamber, this time due to the coronavirus pandemic. During his 20-minute speech, he called for an increase in the state's personal income tax rate from 3.07% to 4.49%. However, the Wolf administration said that is not for all earners, just the top third income earners, but that is still a significant development. Republicans quickly fought back at that proposal, saying that, one, they think it would be a disaster. We have seen Senator Jake Corman, Senate Majority Leader Kim Ward, and others basically all be united against Wolf's proposal, specifically raising that increase. And then as well, it's worth noting that he also wants to increase education spending as well, which he's seen that he's done quite a bit. He's been trying to push for during his time in office.
Yeah, before we leave the income tax hike, the fact of the matter is the Pennsylvania Constitution says that everybody has to be taxed equally. You know, you can't have a tax applied differently, meaning a progressive tax. I guess that's one way to put it. So did the governor explain how he's going to get around that constitutional provision that different people would pay a different income tax? Constitution, as I indicated, would seem to prohibit that.
And that's another key part that Republicans were stressing, Terry, that they think due to I think it was the 1968, I think in the Pennsylvania state constitution, that there is a flat rate. Different earners cannot pay a higher wage. Governor Tom Wolf, who again came into office when he first ran, he self-funded a lot of his campaign. And he's made the case that he thinks that higher earners should pay a little more. Although, again, he tried to make the case yesterday that he's able to do so. Although Republicans, again, are adamant that this is unconstitutional.
Yeah. All right. There isn't any doubt that the major focus of this budget is on education. The current budget did not provide an increase. It was flat funding for the public schools and for the public universities in the state. So what is it that he's proposed? I mean, obviously the tax hike would in large part go to fund the education program that the governor wants to, the programs that the governor wants to increase their funding.
Mm-hmm. Correct. So we know when Governor Wolf, when he first ran, he talked a lot about education spending, kind of wanted to be known as the education governor. And this budget proposal kind of reminds me a bit of the first two budget proposals where he took a much more bold approach. He even said in his address, it's time to take a bold approach to this upcoming budget. And education, again, you're talking about over $1 billion in education spending up and down the line from pre-K all the way up to college spending. And again, something where Republicans, Democrats are definitely not on the same page here at all. But it's worth noting that the governor has made this certainly made it a priority during his time in office.
Yeah, I think we're talking about a 20% increase in public school funding. I think that's the number that I got out of the budget proposal.
Correct.
All right, well, look, let's run to a break. Boy, we have a bunch of other things to talk about. I want to talk about the legalization of marijuana, an increase in the, what tax do I want to say? You get it. All right, we'll be back after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine.
All right, John Cole, as I think a lot of folks know, Governor Wolf has wanted to impose a Marcellus shale tax. We already have one. It's the impact fee. He's looking at, the severance tax, as it's called. Talk about that.
So like we said in the previous segment, we know the big story is, again, the personal income tax proposal increase. However, this budget proposal also includes a number of things that Wolf has been pushing since he ran as a candidate back in 2014, where he talked about a tax on natural gas extraction, a severance tax there. Again, he's been pushing for that since he's been governor, although with the Republican-controlled state legislature, it's certainly unlikely that he will be successful in that fight. But he's made that a constant in all of his budget proposals.
Mm-hmm. All right, recreational marijuana. By the way, in a poll that we did at F&M a couple years ago, 58% of Pennsylvanians support the legalization of recreational marijuana. Big differences between Republicans and Democrats. So, as you know, Governor Wolf and his Lieutenant Governor, John Fetterman, big supporters of legalization.
Correct. So this wasn't a part of, during Governor Wolf's first term, he wasn't exactly pushing for the legalization of recreational use of marijuana. In his second term, though, it's certainly become more of a sticking point that he's been pushing for. Like you said, public sentiment has grown. That it's increasingly clear that more people in the state are starting to support it, but there's certainly a divide between how the governor views the topic and many Democrats in the state legislature compared to Republicans. And again, I don't think there's significant enough Republican support thus far for this to get there yet, but it's certainly becoming increasingly popular among Democrats.
Yeah, when they got the medicinal marijuana, that was universally supported. There was not a big debate over that for obvious reasons, but it's very, very different with recreational marijuana.
Oh, completely different debate. You're right. The first time when it came to medicinal use, there was bipartisan support. And to this date, at least as we talk here in February of 2021, we have not seen that type of widespread bipartisan support in the state legislature on that issue.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Well, one other issue, and again, we're back to something that Governor Wolf has proposed over and over again, and that's hiking the minimum wage. I think it's $7.25 right now in the state. He wants to go immediately to $12 an hour, ultimately to $15 an hour. So talk a little about that.
So Governor Wolf's been pushing for an increase in the minimum wage for several budgets. Again, we know that the state's minimum wage is the federal minimum wage. Democrats, again, have been calling for an increase for quite some time. Governor Wolf pushing for, essentially, he wants $15 an hour, although that would be a gradual increase, like you mentioned. Last year, he called for something similar where he wanted it by $12 an hour by July, to a gradual increase each year to $15. However, again, the Republican-controlled state legislature makes that certainly unlikely right now. Although we know in the past there has been chatter in past years about possibly a compromise. We don't know if that is in the works right now, but maybe that's something that we can keep an eye on. Even though 15, his proposal right now is certainly unlikely to get support among Republicans, but I wonder if there's a common ground there that they can agree on.
Yeah, well, I thought all along, and I'm not saying it because I support it or not, I'm neutral because of what I do, but the fact of the matter is I thought that there would be a compromise reached when we're talking about this particular subject, the minimum wage. I thought if we have $7.25, which we do, maybe they go to $8.50 and then, maybe not the 12 immediately. He wants to go to $12 an hour, and then ultimately, I think, is it 50 cents a year he would increase it to get the $15 an hour?
Correct. And again, I think that's essentially a non-starter for Republicans, that immediate increase from $7.25 up to $12 an hour. However, the compromise will be fascinating because I think you'll get some Republicans, I'm sure, that will sign on for a couple dollar increase, but there may be some Democrats that say that's not bold enough. And again, depending on how high they want the increase to be, you might have some Republicans saying they're not on board. So it's one of those things that we're going to have to keep an eye on. But as of now, again, in Governor Wolf's budget proposal, he is pushing for $12 an hour by July, for a gradual increase to $15 an hour in a few years. But again, worth remembering that there's a Republican-controlled state legislature in the state Senate and the state House. So right now, again, Republicans have made it clear that they do not support that current proposal from Governor Wolf.
On your site, you run a lot of articles from different, publications, newspapers, et cetera. And the fact of the matter is the divisions between the Democrats and the Republicans in the legislature on some of these big issues, not on the routine matters, but on some of these big issues is to use the word profound.
Certainly. We know Pennsylvania being a battleground state, there's a lot of people that find themselves kind of in the middle. They would consider themselves moderates. And I think there are moderates in the state legislature, Republican and Democrats alike. However, like you said, it couldn't be further apart on some of these big issues like minimum wage and others.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like it's likely to get any better.
We can hope there's some common ground eventually.
All right, we're out of time. I want to thank you for coming on. As always, you're always welcome. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.